welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, we got, I believe, 4 more teams to do this offseason review for.
4 more, yeah.
And we're doing 2 more today. Both of our favorite teams, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the San Jose Sharks. We're both kind of covering each other's team, but of course we'll be talking throughout about it, and we'll probably hijack each other's because of that. But
most likely.
Jumping right in, if you don't mind.
Before we jump in,
go for it.
Normally we don't want to do any news around the league during these, just because these are long, in their own right as is. But with this, we cannot ignore it because it is all over the place. Jeremy Swayman. So we know earlier today,
fair.
The Bruins kind of did a press conferencing, or whatever you want to call it, media scrum, and it was reported from the Bruins that an 8x8 was offered to Swayman and his agent, his camp. Don't know if that's actually true or not, because now we hear, we get a report from Swayman's agent saying, we never even received that. Here in 8x8 is the first we've heard of these numbers, and then saying, that it's kind of disrespectful and a slap in the face to Swayman, and everything else involved with it.
Yeah.
So messy situation, as is already, as we've kind of mentioned. And it just got worse. About 2 hours ago, it was reported that Jeremy Swayman is contemplating requesting a trade out of Boston. So
it's hard to know. It's hard to know if that's real, just because.
No, it comes from Elliot Friedman, who.
Well, yeah.
Is the biggest insider.
No. I'm not saying it's coming from untrustworthy. I bet it came straight from either Swayman or the agent. I'm just saying that's got to be that's contract negotiations 101. If you're looking to ask for a trade, they're going, fuck, okay, fine. We'll sign you for your money. Like, they've been very smart in their negotiations so far, and they kind of gave him the ammo to. They gave
Swayman his camp all the ammo.
Because
literally they gave them everything.
That's what an insane thing to do, to come out and be like, we offered him this exact contract. Not just we offered him a contract or we're in negotiations. He said $64 million. He said we offered him an 8x8 and he said no. That never happens. I'm not going to say it literally has never happened, but this very, very rarely happens at the least.
Yeah.
That's so Bush League to come out and drop specific numbers. All you ever hear is, we're in talks, we're trying to get something done, hopefully it works out, it's a business, stuff like that. You never hear specific numbers, so I was shocked when I heard about that, and you know what? I freaking hope Swayman holds him up for every penny he can, because that's...
So I'm in between, because personally for me, I think an 8x8, I kind of thought, in 8 years, 8.5, I think was a fair deal. There's no, again, we don't know from the Swayman camp, but there's reports that they're asking for 8 years, 10 mil or more, which I think is insane as is. But it's also now to the point where the Bruins have already stated, opening night, Korpisalo is the starting goalie. And so they already kind of know in their mind, this isn't going to get done anytime soon. If, again, the Allmark deal, if you're trading Swayman, you're going to lose that deal. The Bruins are just fucked. They're in such a bad spot, and yeah, it's awful. The only person I think who's the happiest guy in the world right now is Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah,
because if Swayman his camp hold out and they keep doing this, and he gets 10 or 10.5, holy shit, is Igor gonna get just an absurd contract? So yeah. That's kind of where it's at right now. Obviously, no official request for a trade has happened yet, but there's reports that could be happening, as it seems like the relationship between the Bruins and Swayman is just getting worse by the day, by the minute.
I feel like a lot of people are looking at this, I don't know, somehow different because he's a goalie, but could you imagine if this happened with Draisaitl? they're trying to get the extension done, and then he goes, "Yeah, we offered him 13/8, and he said no." Like, what? Everyone would be like, "You bozo! Like, you're gonna piss him off. He's gonna walk." Like,
Yeah.
like it's crazy to just throw the actual numbers out there when that's
And
just
when
like
it's and it
never
also
something people
opens
do.
and it opens a thing of like, okay, so which side is lying, right? Like either the Bruins are, they're lying about whatever, the 8x8 they put out, or Swayman's agent is lying about never getting that offer,
Yeah,
never even hearing those numbers, and like
which
so
I
then
would
it
say
just
is
makes the
fine.
situation even worse.
I would say I would say Swayman and his agent are well within their right to lie to the public and say we never got that because
Which
we
I
shouldn't
think
know
is
because we
what
shouldn't
it is.
know what got offered. Like I think either they lied to the media and they're probably super pissed, or they told the truth and they're also still super pissed. Like it's either
Yeah.
way, it's absolutely insane. So yeah, like it's hard to feel. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it was already pretty tough to feel sympathy for the Bruins org, but especially after that, like that's a tough look. Even if you think like what Swayman's asking for is crazy high and you don't like the contract, like he's insane for asking for it. Like even that's fair, but like this still just isn't how you do business, even if he's asking for too much.
And it is worth noting that Jeremy Swayman does have the same agent as William Nylander, and we saw what happened with Nylander with his first kind of extension with the Leafs.
He's not
It
afraid to
it,
play the long
it,
game with it.
it exactly right. So
The
uh,
Atlantic is too good of a division to fuck around because if the Bruins go into the
yeah.
season without Swayman, I think they're going to find out.
The thing is also though, like Swayman requests a trade. Okay, then what? Like he's not getting his big contract that he wants so badly.
Yeah,
Because if the Bruins are trading Swayman, they're sure as hell not trading him and taking on a big contract or a bunch of salary from another team so they can sign him. And if they want 10 mil, there's only four teams that have the money to sign that like right away. And
true, but usually you'll if you can get a guy the caliber of Swayman and you like the contract you can get him on, like they'll find ways to make room. Whether it's with the Bruins or another team, they can move some salary around.
yeah, it's just tough looking though when you're like there's only a handful really of teams that have 5 million or more in cap space.
Yeah,
Like you think of the team that could use him the most, they're all right up against the cap. Yeah. I'm just curious to see how this plays out now because right now neither side is really winning, and the longer this goes on, it just hurts more sides, more so the Bruins. But uh, first time we've seen something like this in a while, so let's buckle up for it because it's going to go on for a long time. It looks like.
yeah. I really thought it would be done by now, but they're both sides really are at the very least selling the narrative that they're in it for the long haul in these negotiations. So
Yeah.
we'll see, because if it passes December 1st, I don't see a world where he signs with them after that. Like
No.
that's
Yeah. No. If it reaches that point, yeah, then they would for sure have to move him. And even then, though, then Swayman's definitely not getting. If there were, we don't know for sure, but if they are actually looking for 10 million or more, they probably don't get that if he actually has to sit out an entire year.
yeah.
So that's why I really don't like. I think by December 1st, he'll either be signed with the Bruins or moved. Um,
Man,
so
losing
we'll see
Omar
what
and
happens.
Swayman in one like 6 month period, that would
It
be
would
crazy turnaround
awful. It would, yeah. There'd have to be changes in Boston if
for
they
sure.
let that happen. But moving on from that,
We will
Tampa
dive
Bay
into
and
them.
San Jose. Which side of the coast would you like to start on?
I would like to start with your San Jose Sharks.
Alrighty,
Yeah,
works for me.
I'm excited to talk about this team. Obviously they're your team, but they're probably my second favorite team. They're right beside the Flames there. I love the Lightning, and then I have, basically all the teams that my close friends cheer for, like the Sharks, the Flames, the Islanders. They're, you know, they're my next picks, and uh,
Mhm.
this team has a very bright future. It was only a couple seasons ago where it was very bleak looking, and also they didn't have the great young talent coming up. So it's good to see that they got a lot of young guys coming up. Obviously mainly Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, William Eklund has really come into his own already. Like we figured he was going to be good, but 45 points, 16 goals in 80 games last year. Like already last year, he's 21 years old, second on the team in scoring. That's a real nice look, and they still have, obviously they have all of their own firsts for the next 3 years, all their own seconds. They have none of their thirds, which looks really weird, but they do have the Oilers and Avs third for this upcoming year. So they got a very slightly more draft capital this year than normal, but this team does not have very much tied up far into the future. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, both their current goalies on the main roster only have 1 year left till they're both UFAs. Askarov's injured right now, but he has 2 years. Nobody on the D-core has more than 2 years signed. Um, like Celebrini and Will Smith are on their ELCs, which are 3-year contracts, and they're both tied for like the second longest contract, which is 3 years, and then Toffoli has 6 years. So like they've done a really good job of making it so they have all the room and the wiggle room, the cap space that they can really shape this team in the next few years however they want. Like the only thing that like sticks around with for any reasonable time is Tomas Hurdle's buyout, or not buyout, salary retention. That's for 6 years, but that's 1.38 mil on the cap, which is not
Yeah.
nothing, but pretty damn close to it, and nothing for the situation they're in.
Yeah.
Askarov actually has 3 years left. I forgot. His 2 year. It was a 2 year extension. He has 1 year
2
left on his
extension.
ELC, so he
Yeah.
is actually for 3 years as well. But
Which also, like, when, you bring up Askarov, like, it's, you look at the hurdle retention again, in my opinion, it really doesn't matter. Um, it didn't matter at the time of the trade because, again, like, San Jose's they're not in cap hell anymore. They were a couple years ago. They've moved out a lot of those. Like, they have, I believe it's like the third or fourth most cap space in the league going into this season. Yeah, the
one,
term six
yeah,
years is kind of crazy, but when you look at it, it's like it's only like a little bit over $1 million. So it's really not an insane amount. And more than anything, the two pieces they got in the hurdle trade were the two main pieces flipped to Nashville in acquiring Askarov, who, wherever you want to put him in your goalie rankings, in 99% of people's, he's either one or two. So, getting a top two goalie prospect in the entire league is huge for a team that, had no direction in terms of, who is going to be the guy going forward for them. They kind of know that now for sure. And so that makes it a bit easier for them going forward, not trying to have to address that issue.
yeah, yeah. It's that was like I didn't love the hurdle trade originally, but they flipped those pieces into Askarov, and that was a masterclass. Like they wanted to get rid of Askarov, and they did not wait long to make that move in Nashville, and uh yeah, almost similar to the way they got Jake Wallman, just kind of a team really wanted to move on from a guy and just deal with it really quick, and uh Big Bunny Mike just kind of stepped in and really took advantage of that. So that was a huge move for them, and I think Askarov's going to be phenomenal for them,
Yeah.
especially as a right catching goaltender. I feel like a lot of teams might have a weird time, like especially on the power play, kind of setting up against him, and then he's got his glove side on the weird other side. It's all weird. Like I genuinely wonder if NHL players, do you plan for that, or Like, I imagine they have
Yeah.
some video coaches that kind of
Yeah.
prepare them for it, but like when you're on the ice, it's got to be weird.
It's definitely a different perspective. Um, with the Askarov trade, one thing I will say is, when you're looking at it for San Jose, really more than anything, like, yeah, David Edstrom is, a good prospect. He was a former, first round pick of Vegas, but they didn't need him.
Yeah.
Once it was like, we knew for sure San Jose won the draft lottery, they're getting Celebrini. Like, one of the first things I said to one of my buddies was, okay, I think David Edstrom's getting moved. Just because now you've got Celebrini, you've got Will Smith and Philip Beestead, who, if you don't know Philip Beestead, he was the very first draft pick Mike Greer used since becoming GM. He's already a little bit more established. He's already made the jump to North America. He looked really good in the AHL last year. He'll play in the AHL again this year, but he was already a step ahead of Edstrom. I think he's not by a lot, but he is a better player all around, and he fits in the timeline better with the Sharks. So, David Edstrom, like, you don't need him to be a fourth line center. You can go out and find a fourth line center anywhere. So, you're trading away a prospect that you didn't need and a first round pick. I don't know where Vegas is going to end up. Could be, maybe a potential top 10 pick. It could be middle. It could even be in the 20s. So, but if you're giving up a first round pick, really, regardless of where it ends up, to get a guy like Askarov, you take that all day.
Yeah.
You take that every time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, he's a bit more established as well. Like, we talk about him as a prospect, and he still kind of is. He hasn't played a full NHL season, but he's far from, what he was, 2 or 3 years ago, where people knew his name and they figured he'd be good, but, it's still so far out. You don't know if he'll make it at the AHL level, less so on the NHL level. So it's a lot more of a sure thing at this point than it was. So I really love that deal for them. And what do you, in your opinion, what are some of the better moves that they made this offseason? Because they did make quite a few moves, some of them good, some of them bad.
Yeah.
Do you have any other ones that really stick out to you over this past offseason?
There's a few. So the first one being, you get Jake Wallman in a second for free. And then getting that extra second allowed, who, by the way, we'll talk about that second in a second here, because San Jose got a really good player with that second round pick. But that basically allowed San Jose to use one of their other seconds along with Pittsburgh's first round pick that they had to move up to 11, which really kickstarted their offseason, because, again, like, you already knew, everybody knew they were taking Celebrini at 1. And then kind of the sense was, moving from 14 to 11, it was so San Jose could move up to get a defenseman, really kind of whichever one was available. Funny enough, actually, they had their pick between 2 defensemen, which for me, I think the biggest thing for San Jose was the draft this year for them. But between their first 4 picks, between their 2 first round picks or 2 second round picks, all slam dunk picks. Celebrini at 1, that was a no brainer. Somehow Sam Dickinson fell to 11, which he doesn't have maybe as high of a ceiling as some of the other top defensemen in the draft, but the general consensus is kind of like he has at least the highest floor. So you're getting a stud defenseman regardless, and then start a second round, you get Igor Chernyshov, who I thought was going to go in the late teens. He fell to the second round, and then using that second round from Detroit, they got Saulin Wallenius, who, again, was another guy that I had picked in my mock draft to go kind of in the mid 20s. So, what scouts are saying, like, you got 4 first round players pretty much between the first and second round. So for me, that was the biggest thing, was just how well they executed in the draft and getting, players that Like Celebrini, you know, he's touted or projected to be like first line, you know, franchise centerman. Sam Dickinson, he's either going to be a very solid first pair guy or he's going to be an absolute elite second pair guy. Chernyshov is projected to be like a kind of a second line power forward type guy. And then Salim Wallenius is, again, he's projected to be an elite, you know, bottom pair guy, or he's going to be a very, very good middle pair guy. So adding that into what they already had, you know, it made them undoubtedly the number one prospect pool in the league. And that was before even adding Askarov in there to really like,
yeah,
you know, give it that extra step. So for me, that's it is their drafting and how well they set this team up going forward, which is maybe why they're also comfortable giving up, you know, Vegas's first, looking at what they've already got.
yeah, and they
And
even
what are
have
they missing was the goaltender.
yeah, and they even have a bit of a contingency plan there, just in case they do pretty good and Vegas falls off. They'll swap picks if they somehow finish above them. So they
Yeah.
even have that little bit of insurance that this doesn't blow up in their face in that
Yeah.
regard. So they really have done a phenomenal job this offseason. Like people are talking about it a bit, but I really don't think they're talking about it enough. Like the Wallman thing is quite frankly insane that Stevie Y would even offer it.
Yeah.
But
I still can't believe that. Like
I
that's
can't
really what kickstarted the entire offseason for the Sharks, I think. Was
like
that move right there.
how does Yzerman, if he wants out from Wallman that bad for whatever reason, he seriously doesn't think that Wallman and a fourth for future considerations wouldn't go through? Teams would be like, no. Like they would have taken Wallman straight up for nothing easily in
Yeah.
San Jose. He gave him a second. That's a good pick. So that's crazy. Tyler Toffoli is a very underrated signing. Like
I like that signing.
he's going to put up great numbers for them. He's going to score a lot of goals, and they got a lot of guys who are going to want to dish him the puck. I think for at least a few years of this deal, he's going to be playing with Celebrini, probably Will Smith at some point. That kind of remains to be seen.
It,
But
it sounds like for the most part, again, you know, the Sharks aren't going to come out and be like, "Oh, this is like the confirmed plan," but everything is kind of pointing like, you know, Toffoli was brought in to kind of play with Celebrini and kind of be
yeah,
that, you know, that guy on the wing with him, that established veteran with the high end skill. And
yeah,
what I really like about Toffoli is, you know, in his interview, he's kind of asked like, you know, why San Jose? Like at this point in your career, why would you come to a team that was just one of the worst teams ever in NHL history? And it was intriguing to him, first of all, because like we've already kind of talked about previously, his wife is from the area. So it's very exciting for her to kind of be back home closer to family. And he talked about his time in LA and, you know, when he was kind of just coming into the league, all these great, and he's already won a cup, by the way. So he doesn't necessarily need to go cup chase,
well, yeah, which
but
is huge.
he was talking about his earlier days in LA and just, you know, some of the veterans on that team that really kind of took him under their wing and, you know, helped him find his way in the NHL and establish himself. And he said at this point in his career, he wants to give that back to some of these young guys in San Jose, which I thought was really cool that he's excited about coming in and being a mentor to, again, what's going to be a really young team now going into next year.
Yeah, and one thing that, especially to me, kind of really kind of shows that he means that is he's one of the only guys on this team that has a no movement clause.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to get traded away if something's good is offered to San Jose. Like Wenberg signed here, nope, he's got no trade protection. Nico Stern signed, he didn't get any of that. Like like nobody else on the team has any type of trade protection other than players that were already traded there. Like Wallman has it, but obviously he got that from over in Detroit.
Yeah.
Goodrow got that from the Rangers. And then the only other two guys who have it are Vlasic and Couture, who have been here since day one. So,
Yeah, they're
they
the veterans.
they wanted no movement clauses back when they were going to the Cup final. So, yeah, like it really shows that he does want to be here and he wants to help out. And that payday don't hurt either. 4 years at $6 million is pretty sweet for him. So, I think he's going to be
Exactly, right.
phenomenal for him.
And he was willing to take that 4-year deal. That was one of the I believe that was one of the first things that like Mike Gear stated going into free agency is, we're going to be looking around, keeping our options open, but 4 years is the max. And we knew that they were really trying to go after Chandler Stevenson as well, but when he was looking for a longer deal than 4 years, and fair enough, he had all the right to, and he made the right call with the deal he got.
Yeah.
But Toffoli was okay with that 4-year deal, and so it worked out really well for both sides. And I think he's going to have a lot of fun playing with a guy like Celebrini too. That's got to be very exciting for him.
Yeah. And yeah, like, that 4-year deal, like I said earlier, that's the longest deal they have going right now on the team. So like their future is wide open.
Yeah.
But we will get to the projected lines here. So these ones seem a little bit weird, but we'll definitely talk our way through it. These are the daily face-off projected lines. So this is just what they think the lines are going to be this season. I don't believe any of them are confirmed, but that's just what they assume the team's going with. They have the first line set as Mikhail Granlund, Tyler Toffoli, and Macklin Celebrini in the middle.
I mean, if that's what they go with, like I'm okay with that. I think that's putting Celebrini in a really good spot, like kind of in between two very skilled, established players. Like, I know Granlund kind of got a bad rep after kind of a disappointing end with Nashville, and then going to Pittsburgh and really, not doing much. He was kind of just a throw-in the Karlsson trade to make the salary work.
Yeah.
But I mean, he put up 60 points in 69 games last year on, again, a horrible Sharks team. So, I don't know what the plan is long term, because he is 32. So I don't know if the plan is, come the trade deadline, he's moved, and the Sharks are getting more picks and prospects, or again, kind of being a veteran on what's a very young team. Maybe they find a way and they extend him and he continues to be a part of this team. But I still think he's better suited playing at center. He played all of last year. It worked. He helped elevate some of the younger players, most notably Eklund and Zetterlund, we'll talk about. So if he's on the first line with Celebrini and Toffoli, I think that's awesome. But there's still like there's other pieces you could put in there that I think could flourish with those two as well. So really depends if you want to go top heavy with a team that's clearly not making the playoffs, or kind of spread it out and let everybody kind of feel good about themselves after potentially losing. Hopefully there's going to be no more double-digit losses, but you never know. With this team still, you can't guarantee that they're not going to get 10 put up on them in a game again.
Yeah, it's and you know what? There's quite a few other teams that got 10 dropped on them last season, so it's not like they're alone in that.
Yeah.
They do have on Daily Faceoff the second line listed here as William Eklund on the left side, Klim Kostin on the right side, centered by Will Smith.
Here's the thing.
I don't know if Klim Kostin makes it into the top 6.
In my opinion, no. I know the Sharks are really high on Klim Kostin, where they really kind of got him for free as a cap dump from Detroit. Maybe that's potentially why Detroit, Yzerman did what he did and offered that Wallman deal to San Jose, is because San Jose really kind of helped out Detroit taking Klim Kostin's contract from him. But I know the Sharks are high on him because they like that he's got that kind of goal scorer's touch, but he's also more on the he's on the bigger end and a little bit more physical. Just trying to find his height here, because I was surprised, actually. I didn't realize he was as big as he was. 6'4", 230 pounds.
That's a big boy.
So big boy. Again, when you've got this many young guys, you want to have some big players with them. But really, I think when you're looking at it, and Fabian Zetterlund's on the third line, after the season he had last year, I don't think you can have Zetterlund in your bottom six. I think he's earned his right to play in the top six until he loses it.
Yeah,
he's by no means lost it.
Yeah, he was third on the team in scoring last year, only 1 point behind William Eklund. By 8 goals, he was the highest goal scorer on the team as well last year. And that 8 goals is another 50% on second place. Both Eklund and Duclair had 16. He had 24. So, like, he scored the most goals by a healthy amount, too. So, I definitely think he should be up there. And I feel like he should be that right wing on the second line. And I think for that second line, you maybe go Smith, Granlund, and Zetterlund, and then you put Eklund up on that top line. Like, he played really well last year.
There has been talks of, well, I don't know necessarily from the Sharks, but I know a lot of fans want that. They want to see, Eklund celebrating Toffoli just because, I mean, it's 71, 72, 73 all playing together.
Oh, yeah, I didn't notice that.
But, like, I think that's the way to go. I'm not on the side of, just right out of the gate coming out hot and just being like, celebrating Smith on the same line. I wouldn't do that. I don't think that's going to be good for either of them, especially
if Smith really outperforms the second line, then fine, move him up. Like, if he earns it, obviously, but until he does that, like, I don't think you bump him up to the first line immediately.
Yeah, and a big thing is deciding where does Smith play? Like, do you want Granlund on the wing, or does Will Smith start out on the wing as he kind of gets himself accustomed to playing in the NHL? Like, the biggest thing is the Sharks have options. They had absolutely none last year. Like, that team was walking into every game right out of the gate to start the season, just ready to get their faces beaten just over and over. And that's probably still the case this year, not to the same extent, but they have options. Your top six, whatever way you go with it, is looking very, like, a lot more stronger and healthier than it was last year, which is the biggest thing when just looking at it right now.
Yeah, they can make moves, and, like, they've got more top end talent than they did, and it'll at the very least make it more interesting to watch them, as well as help their guys develop. Like, it's going to be a huge year for them.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is, it's development. Obviously, this team knows, they're not making the playoffs. They're not going on a cup run. So it's really just, getting your young players that, again, like, a lot of your kind of future is now playing, in terms of your forwards, at least. And so it's just allowing them to develop, allow them to get comfortable, playing in the NHL every night, and really just going from there. So,
yeah. The third line that they have listed, Carl Grundstrom on the left, Fabian Zetterlund on the right, centered by Nico Sturm.
So if Zetterlund does play on the third line, like, that's a great third liner. I don't expect him to be there, but the way they have it right now, that's where they put him. But I think so too.
Yeah, like, that's not a bad third line at all.
Personally, again, we talked about it beforehand. I would move Wenberg up to the third line there and move Nico Sturm down.
Yeah, and I agree.
In my opinion, that makes the third line just a little bit better.
Yeah. Bring in Wenberg at $5 million per for the next, 2 years? Like,
2 years, yeah.
It's weird to go sign a guy in free agency for $5 million and then just play him on the fourth line. Like, if you just got to get to the salary floor and that's just what you're doing, fine. But you could get more use out of Wenberg.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, like, is this third line great, elite? No, it's probably still in the 28 to 32 range. But it's at least better than last year. Again, we're looking at, like, that's the worst third line. At least you can make the argument that it's not anymore. So
yeah, it looks better than most teams' fourth lines.
Yeah,
like when when you're a rebuilding team and then you've got that like third line that's worse than a lot of fourth lines, or a second line worse than third lines, that's when you know you've really got some problems. So they're not in
Yeah.
that territory anymore.
Yeah, they've gotten out of that area, which is the biggest thing, right? Is, hoping at least. Like, stuff could go severely wrong this year for the Sharks, but the consensus kind of is like, their worst days are behind them now. Like, last year was as low as it's going to get for them in the rebuild. You've now gotten that first overall pick that you kind of hope for when going through a rebuild. So, like, the you can start to kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, but again, it's going to be a tough, at least 2 more years before this team starts to be contending again. But it's a step in the right direction from where they were, both in terms of first line, second line, and third line now.
And that fourth line, honestly, doesn't look horrible either. Luke Kunin on the left side, Barclay Goodrow on the right, centered by Alex Wenberg, or Nico Sturm in our estimation, if he's probably going to be on the fourth. But either way, like, that's, you're not bringing up AHL level guys to fill those spots anymore. Like, those are NHL players.
100%, yeah. And the thing that bugs me, right? And the thing I'm still having a hard time understanding is, so you re-sign Luke Kunin, who, the Sharks are a very big fan of the way he plays, his leadership ability. That's fine. Like, keeping Luke Kunin, okay, sure. But then you claim Barclay Goodrow off waivers. You trade Kyle Burrows to LA, who actually, it looks really good for LA now because they're going to need Kyle Burrows after Drew Doughty going down. But you get Carl Grundstrom back. And then you trade, I think it was like a fourth round pick or something, to Dallas for Ty Dellandrea, who isn't even on here, isn't featured on here. Yeah. And it's like, how, in one offseason, you go out and get 3 of the exact same players, to the point now where, between those guys, Giovanni Smith, who's not on here, Couture, that's bound to return at some point, like, you're in a position now where you're going to have to move someone. So, I mean, it's nice because you've got lots of different depth pieces you can kind of, work with and move around, but it's like you have so many of the same guys. I would almost include Klim Kostin there, but I think Kostin's got a little bit more of a goal scorer's touch than the rest of them, at least. But you've got a lot of the same guys. Again, Nico Sturm, he might be on his way out come trade deadline. He's only got 1 year left. Carl Grundstrom, I think he's only got 1 year left. Luke Kunin, I think Ty Dellandrea, they see him being part of the team going forward, just because he's kind of a little bit more on the younger side. And
Grundstrom has 2 years left on his deal.
They did. Actually, they did. Yeah, because they were both RFAs, so they did extend both of them. So Ty Dellandrea, I think, should be in here somewhere because he is part of your team going forward. He's a former first round pick. And there was just no room for him in Dallas. We never really got to see him playing a higher role than a fourth line or a healthy scratch. So they have options, at least. I'm curious to see how it all kind of shakes out. In terms of other young forwards, we know most of them have now been sent to the AHL or back to juniors. So, really on daily faceoff, you're looking at the 4 lines here. And then you've got Dellandrea, Giovanni Smith, and an injured Logan Couture, who is projected to return at some point, but don't really know when. So,
yeah, he's currently on IR.
There's your favorite player, Thomas Bordeleau, as well.
Yeah,
he's again. We don't know what. Out. I know he's kind of day to day with an injury, but again, that's another guy. Like, I personally think he gets moved. Whether it's early on in the year or the trade deadline, just because it really kind of seems like a lot of the, really Eklund is kind of the one outlier just because, he was a top 10 pick. But it seems like Mike Greer and his guys are moving out a lot of the former like prospects and whatnot from the previous regime that the Sharks had. So I'd like to see
Yeah.
Bordeleau play, but everything is still kind of pointing to he's probably going to get moved. So
Yeah.
if you're a Sharks fan, don't be too excited about watching Bordeleau play much this year.
Yeah, I really hoped it would work out for him there, but he it seems like they want to move on from him. He's kind of stalling out a bit on his progression, so it might
I
be
don't think it's
just best
stalling out
for
in his
both
progression. I think it's
sides.
just not being given the opportunity as much.
Yeah, I guess just not progressing with the opportunities given because they're just not putting him in the best spot to succeed. So hopefully
Yeah.
he can if he does get moved, go to a team where he can flourish. And uh, the other two injuries that they have, these are not forwards, but they have Mark-Edward Vlasic, who is currently out, and Yaroslav Askarov, who is also out. So those guys
There
also will
is
not be on these projected lines.
there is one more injury who we'll talk about once we go through the defenseman. He's not listed on here, but he is a name that does need to be talked about when we go through the defenseman.
Okay.
But start us
Speaking
off with
of,
it.
let's go into the defenseman. First pair, Mario Ferraro and Cody Ceci. It's not great.
I mean, it's a defensive pair.
It's a defensive pair. I'll give you that.
It's like it's by no means sexy or anything, but it's a defensive pair. It's a it's their top pair. Um, I like Ferraro. I think he's got a lot to give. I think
Yeah,
he would get like there was rumors and talks of like Toronto potentially being interested in him. Um, people were saying like it was insane that San Jose was never shopping Ferraro, but like they were kind of listening to offers, but it was really they needed like a first, I think another mid round pick and a decent prospect for him, which a lot of people thought was insane. But it was like no one wants to watch San Jose games, or at least well they maybe do now, but like the last couple years, no, like no one wanted to. Um, and like if I was in a bigger market or playing in the playoffs, like people would see actually how good he really can be. Um, is he a number one defenseman? Like no, but he's a very good complementary piece who will go out there and just hit and block shots and he plays full energy every shift. So having him is nice. Again, he's not a top pair defenseman. That's why his numbers last year look so bad because he kind of just got thrust into a role that
he's got to be the guy there.
yeah, he got not even like that he got thrust into a role that he's not ready for. He just got thrust into a role that he's not meant for. He's not
Yeah,
meant to be a top pair, elite defenseman. Like he's meant to be. I mean, he could be a top pair guy um, with the right guy on the other side. But if you get to a point where you can have whatever your top pair is, but you got Ferraro and someone else on your second pair, like it can be a really good pair when the Sharks are contending. But he's
yeah,
gonna have another tough year ahead of him, and I feel for him. But
yeah, and hopefully he can kind of prove to at least to Sharks fans that he's got a lot of value. He's a great player. Like he had 2 minutes more average ice time last season than the next player who was their top scorer, Mikhail Granlund. Like he played
yeah,
an average of 23 minutes a night, and like basically nobody else played 20. It was just Granlund, Hurdle, and then in the 51 games that Henry Thrun played, he had exactly 20 minutes of average time. So
and that's the thing. Like it got to the point where Ferraro was playing top, on the top defensive pair for stints. He was actually on the Sharks' top power play unit, and then Kyle Burrows was in there for a bit, which was a bit wild. But hey, maybe that's what LA got him for now. And then top penalty kill. So like he was literally the go-to guy in every situation. And again, I think that just was a little bit too much for him. That's a lot to ask out of a younger defenseman. It's like, hey, you got to be the top guy in every situation for us. Like,
yeah, he would be an amazing complementary piece. Like
yeah,
if they can keep him around until Sam Dickinson's ready to go, like that would be incredible. Like,
that could, yeah,
but yeah, and having Cody Cece on the top pair with you, that's really not going to help him too much. Like, you're playing that many minutes and you don't really have another guy that like can even really keep up with you, less alone the play that you're going to be facing as the number one D pair. So it
Yeah.
might be rough for him. And honestly, it's a rather similar situation on the second pair. The second pair being Jake Wallman and Jan Ruda. It's going to be tough for those guys too, because
Yeah.
you know, they complement each other's play styles. Wallman's a bit more of an offensive defenseman, not fully, but a bit, and then
He's more
Ruda's kind of a stay-home
comfortable.
guy.
He's more comfortable jumping into the rush.
Yeah, but I mean, Wallman's a top four defenseman, I would say. I don't know if Ruda is, especially at this point, but yeah,
Ruda is an interesting guy because he shows flashes of it. But then sometimes it's like, man, you just get him off the ice. So like he goes up and down in waves. You like some nights he's the worst defenseman, some nights he's by far the best. And maybe it's just the fact of who he's playing with. So I mean, if Woman's a good fit with him, like could be a decent pair, but again, like it's nothing special. It's
yeah.
definitely a step up, and Woman is a drastic improvement from other guys that rotated through on that second pair last year. And I think Woman's probably on the top power play unit as well.
I would assume so,
He makes the most sense.
unless they really want to go for it and they decide to give it to one of the guys on the third pair here, that being Henry Thrun and Matt Benning. I doubt they give Henry Thrun the power play one yet, but I could definitely see it at some point in the near future, in the next 2 to 3 years.
So again, kind of like we talked about before, there being only so many spots and there's a lot of guys in the mix. You mentioned Vlasic, he's injured, but another guy who's currently injured, hasn't played at all in the preseason, is kind of in that same time frame, like not gonna be ready for like opening night, but right around in that area will be ready to return, is Shakir Mukhamadullin, who I think is a guy that's ready to take that next step now. He played all last year in the AHL, was an AHL All-Star. He actually had probably the coolest All-Star entrance ever. I'm not kidding. There's videos of it. I can't remember at the time. I think he might have been called up and was playing with the Sharks at the time or something, or was on vacation or something during the AHL All-Star break. And it was in San Jose. The Sharks were hosting it and whatnot, or like the Barracuda. So obviously they have to have a representative. And I can't remember who it was, but they got injured, and it was like the host team has no one. So Mukhamadullin got the call and was like, "Hey, you're an AHL All-Star. We need you here as a representative." And I think it was like halfway through the skills competition, they just opened the gates and he comes out and the place just went nuts. So, and funny enough, the first person who went over and kind of gave a fist bump to and hugged was his good buddy Yaroslav Askarov, who was there. So,
Well, there you go.
So again, like that's another guy who is it's tough because he didn't play at all in the preseason or really much in training camp, but that's another guy that you're expecting to make the jump. So again, you've got a crowded defensive core when you don't have enough room for all of them. So, and I think if Mukhamadullin does play, I think he probably plays on the power play as well. Wherever they put him, I don't know, but
which side does he play? Do you know, right or left?
He's a left-handed defenseman, but I've seen stints of him playing on both sides. Like it looks like he's pretty comfortable playing on both sides. Yeah, and he's a bigger body too. Like he's 6'4". He's got a decent reach with his stick, so I think that kind of makes it a bit easier for him. Popping over to the right side just because he's got that extra little bit of comfort in being a big size player and having that extra reach when you're on your offside, and things can kind of get difficult sometimes.
Yeah. When he gets in, I really hope he makes it, whether that pushes out Matt Benning or what that has to do, but
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see when he comes back, because they got quite a few guys that are out, and like not a lot of room for when they get back, so they're gonna have to make some.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say with the defense, I don't know if they're going to rush, anyone super early. We kind of talked about with Chicago and Lev Shinov. It's like if they earn their spot, you got to give it to them. But there's no point in forcing something just for the sake of it. And that's Luca Cagnoni on defense. The crazy part is he was one of those guys that fell very late in his draft year in 2023. He fell to the fourth round, 123rd overall. He's only 5'10", 179 pounds, but he did just put up 90 points in 65 games in the WHL last year as a defenseman. He's got very high offensive upside. He has been San Jose's best defenseman during training camp and like preseason games. So, like again, that's another guy, right? Like, and he's eligible for the AHL, which is kind of nice. So you have the option of like calling him up, sending him down. It's not just send him back to juniors.
Yeah.
But again, like that's another guy that he's making such a strong case that he deserves at least some NHL games, and probably, in my opinion, should make the team out of camp. But it really comes down to, so what do you do then? Because you've already got, as you mentioned, 6 NHL defensemen already there. You've got Vlasic, and you still got Muka Madulin, who I think should be playing. So,
yeah,
but that's a good problem to have. That's a good problem to have, though. I think to an extent is you've got lots of guys jumping at the bit, ready to go. You now just have to figure out how do you manage that. And
if you have to trade a guy, you have to trade a guy. That just means you got guys that are as good or better coming up, and you can get a couple assets back. So, it could definitely still turn out pretty good.
Well, and the thing is with the defensemen, I think really aside from Henry Thrun, I think all other 5 guys in that top 6 we talked about, there is a possibility of them being traded at some point during the season. Jake Walman and Ferraro maybe not as likely, but I think you'd pick any guy on the right side, CC, Ruda, or Benning. Any one of them could get traded throughout the season. So, like, they've got options, and guys are going to have to get moved out. Like, you can't run the whole year with every guy you got, because then you're going to be playing guys in the AHL that should be in the NHL and should be providing good value to the team. So Mike Grier's got some stuff to figure out, but at this point, he hasn't given anyone any reason to doubt him at this point. So he'll figure it out. Not too worried about what he does.
And 1 year on Cody CC, 1 year on Jan Ruda, both very movable. 2 years on Matt Benning, but at one point, like $1.25 million for those.
So he's got a decent cap hit. Like, if it's good,
like you can,
like that's move.
You can move that pretty easily. So, and then for the goaltenders, again, this is with Askarov out. I assume he's going to be, when Askarov comes back, he'll probably be in a tandem when he comes back and see if he can take that starting role. But
I don't know what's going to happen with the goalies. I was hoping he'd be healthy for, training camp and preseason, so we'd kind of know a bit more. But like without him
by season
really
start,
practicing and no preseason games, it's like, there was talk of like, he's going to contend for, an NHL job, and there was the option of, a 3 goalie tandem kind of going on, and we don't really know for sure. Would have been nice to see him get at least 1 preseason game in, but it doesn't look like we're going to be getting that now.
As they have it listed now, they have Mackenzie Blackwood in the starter position and backup Vitek Vanacek. I gotta
New
imagine
Jersey
that's
Legends.
interchangeable. New Jersey Legends.
No, I'd put Blackwood. Blackwood I think should be listed as the starter.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, it's not set in stone to where if Vanacek has a good stretch of games, they won't swap him to be the starter. Like if he has a couple really good games, they'll run with him. But that also goes for Askarov. That goes for all three of them. Like it's as soon as Askarov's back, I do think it's going to be all three of them are going to get getting some games in there, and whichever two look best are going to stick around, and we'll see what happens to the other guy. If that other guy ends up being Askarov, he'll go play all the games in the AHL, or maybe they'll just keep him up and try and make it work.
Well,
but
we talked about with Askarov as well. Like he's open to going down and playing in the AHL if he needs to. Like if that's what's best for him, if it's what's best for the team. Like he only wasn't going to for Nashville because he knew that there was no path to an NHL job.
Yeah, once they extended Saros, there was nothing he could do.
He's the only. Well, first of all, he's a young goalie. He's got so much potential. Like he's the guy going forward for San Jose. He's the only goalie that has a contract beyond this upcoming season. So, even if it's just he just balls out in the AHL until the trade deadline or even prior, either Blackwood or Vanacek gets moved out to a team that needs a goalie, and then he comes up and he's going to be an NHL starter, pretty much the rest of his career. So, and he's okay with that. Like he's okay if he has to just go and ball out in the AHL and get to know some of the guys down there and just develop and get better because he knows it's his team when he gets called up, right? So which I think makes it a whole lot easier for him and can just allow him to just actually finally just focus on playing.
Yeah,
and not have to worry about especially with Nashville, like
he doesn't
want watching Saros ball out all year and be like, fuck, like there's no way I can ever get past him. Like no matter how good I am, like that's their guy. And then with San Jose, he knows he's the guy now.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of when.
That's a huge part of it. Like, if you're projecting to even be a starter, but especially if you're projected to be an elite goalie like he is, like you want to go to a team that doesn't already have an elite goalie. Like that doesn't really happen unless, like Boston, these both guys kind of come out of nowhere and are just really that good. Like Omar Lesso came out of nowhere, but nobody knew they would both be that good. So I think he's in a much better spot now, and especially by the end of the season, he'll be the starter, and going forward will be. They would probably prefer to keep Blackwood over Vanacek if they have to trade one, but
I agree.
I don't know how much they'll get for Vanacek unless
I don't think you even really care what you get though.
That's fair.
I don't think you really care. Like even if you can get like a 7th round pick back or something, like you're like okay, because
I don't even think that would happen. Like 3.4
because you don't need him going forward. Like if you can find a team to retain some, awesome. If you ride out the year with them, let them walk. Sure, like you got him trading. I believe it was in like when you traded when the Sharks traded like Capo Kakinen to New Jersey. In part of that deal. So it was like you were losing Kakinen anyways. You get Vanacek. If you lose him, like that's fine. Yeah. It's not like you gave up really assets or anything to get him to begin with. So
yeah. I think they just need to not be afraid. If Askarov and Blackwood are both playing well, they need to not be afraid to send Vanacek down to the AHL or put him on waivers if that has to be the case. Or see if anyone's open to a trade, but just because you have a guy that you're paying 3.4 mil for, that doesn't matter right now, and it's only for the 1 year. So if the other two are better, play those guys.
If Boston's sending out Swayman, they're going to need a backup when Korpisalo takes the reins. That's when you say, hey, take Vanacek. Or Blackwood even for that point. Like,
maybe,
it really doesn't matter if you've got Askarov for the future. Like, if Boston's losing Swayman, they're going to need someone to step in.
I guess, but then they'd be paying 3 mil for Korpisalo and 3.4 for Vanacek. That
gives a shit. Vanacek's on a 1-year deal.
They don't want it for the 1 year though. 6.4 mil for 2 very middling to below average goalies is pretty rough.
I mean, they're gonna. But the thing is they're gonna need something. They're gonna need someone to play the backup role.
They got Bussy or whatever.
So you're gonna roll
that
a
they're
playoff
apparently
contender
relatively
with
high
a
on.
goalie that has like no NHL experience? Like, if you asked Boston, they would much rather take a Mackenzie Blackwood at whatever his cheap deal is, as opposed to some rookie goalie that's making league minimum. Like they'd want something comfortable, because if Korpisalo doesn't pan out, you don't want to, like, Boston's going for a cup. You can't put all your faith in a guy that we only know of because he's got a sick name.
Yeah.
Now, I will say a sick name, but
Blackwood, I think could maybe happen there. I don't see a world where they take on Vanacek. He's making a bit more than $1 million more, and
Vanacek,
in my opinion, Blackwood's
team.
Just better.
You can Vanacek 1 year left. You can find a middle team to retain some. Like, even if it's something as simple as Chicago retains half, San Jose gets a 7, Chicago gets a 5th or something.
Yeah.
Like, San Jose would do that all day long.
Yeah. Jeez.
San Jose would give them up for future
how much that would help
maybe.
How much do you think that would help their situation with Swayman bringing in a backup for the playoffs? Like, that would make things complicated.
No. I'm only talking about, like, if Swayman is like, yeah, I want out, like, trade me.
I guess,
yeah. Like, that's the only reason way I would see that happen, is like if Swayman's like already gone, type of thing. Not like doing it while they still have him.
I see. Fair enough. But those are all the lineups for the San Jose Sharks. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much everything. We got our 2 questions we always ask. Before we get to those, do you have anything else in particular you want to talk about with them? You know, this is your boys. You know, do you have anything in particular that we didn't talk about?
We've already gone in pretty extensively with them. Like, again, the biggest thing is, like, they're not going to be a good team. They've still got, like I said, at least 2 more rough years ahead of them. The best part is now you can at least see, the light at the end of the tunnel. You've got what you're hoping is to kind of be your foundation for your franchise, at least going forward. Obviously, you're probably still going to add another top 5 pick in next year's draft. I'm assuming it probably at least a top 10 pick in the following year to add in. You've got your pieces. The only thing I can say really is I hope Logan Couture can get healthy. Maybe he's gonna have to play the whole year with the Sharks. Like, he's not getting moved. But if the door's open and he comes back healthy, can look good. If there's a way, once Brent Burns' salary retention's off the books, retain half of Couture's money. He would be 36 at the time, but if there's a team going all in, you get Logan Couture for $4 million, who, haven't seen the playoffs in a while, but when he's in the playoffs, he's been one of the best playoff performers.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him go and chase a cup if he's content just staying with the Sharks and being a Shark for life. I'm all for that, but more than anything, I just want to see him play some games again. It's been too long, and more than anything, I think the Sharks could benefit from having their leader, their captain in the room when things get tough, because they were missing a lot of that last year.
Yeah, like, that's a great point. And Couture is, like, throughout his entire career has really been underrated, I feel like, but especially in the playoffs. Like, he's already a great goal scorer and point producer, but in the playoffs, it just elevates, and dude just scores goals constantly in the playoffs. Like, whenever they get in there, like, dude is burying it. So it would be really fun to see him maybe sometime next season get traded when they have that Burns retention slot. Retain that down to $4 million. Hell, if another team wants to take another 25% of that and get it down to 3 something, like, man, that could be real nice for 2 years for a contending team at that point.
100%. And last thing I think the last thing I'll say before move on. I'm excited for Jumbo Joe Thornton's retirement ceremony, retiring number 19 of the Rafters.
Do they know when they're doing that?
It's sometime in November, I believe. If anyone wants to go just look up, like if you probably just look up like Joe Thornton retirement alumni game. The night before they did it with Patrick Marleau. The Sharks are hosting an alumni game at their arena. There's a lot of good, like, fun names in there that'll be playing in that game. So that'll be a good time. Last thing I'll say is I love also how Celebrini, like his family, lives in San Jose. They're in the area, and they even said they want him. Now he's with the Sharks to come and live at home while during his rookie year. And he's like, nah, I'm gonna go live with Joe Thornton instead.
It's so good.
I love that. I love that as well. He's picking Jumbo Joe over his family to an extent. Obviously, he still loves his family, but wants to live with Jumbo, learn all that he has to offer, and I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, the vice president of vibes, Jumbo Joe Thornton.
That's what he's known for. You better get used to seeing Joe Thornton go tarps off, because that's kind of one of his specialties.
That's his specialty. But kind of goes without saying, do we see the Sharks being a playoff team this year?
I do. No, absolutely not. Like they're going to be bad. They realistically they could be the bottom team in the league again.
Same with the Blackhawks. Like when we talked about them, like we know they're not going to be, and they're not supposed to be.
Yeah. Like they're 100% going to be bad. Like what did they have last year? 47 points or something. They're going to be bad. Don't get me wrong, but like they're not going to be that bad. Like
47.
There's a realistic chance they increase by 15 to 20 points. Like they're still going to be bad, but like last year was like insanely
abysmal.
bad.
Like,
like what? Do you still have the lines put up? Where's Luke Cunnin? Was he third line or fourth line?
Fourth line this upcoming year.
So he was second line center for a good chunk of last year.
Yeah. So since then he's moved down 2 lines and he's over to the wing. Like
and that's not to like shit on Luke Cunnin, but it's like, I like the way he plays. I like the physicality. I like the leadership, but not a second line center.
Yeah.
Like some guys aren't meant to be a second line center in the NHL.
Yeah, in the past decade, they had one of the single worst seasons. Like them, the Avalanche in, what was it, 16, 17? And then the one year the Red Wings were atrocious. Was that like 18, 19 or something like that? Like those are like the 3 teams that have had really standout bad years, not just like kind of being the bottom team. Underratedly though, everyone talks about like the Sharks are almost historically bad. Blackhawks were only 5 points above them. Like it's not like they were clearing them. So
which
they didn't do
great. I mean, not a lot of people talk about, but like at the end of the day, like Chicago wasn't like San Jose back-to-back nights allowing 10 plus goals against.
Yeah,
they lost their first 11 games. Like Chicago was bad, but San Jose went through some games and some stretches where it was like they were without a doubt by far the worst team I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. But that being said, which player do you have winning or most likely to win an individual award this season?
I mean, in my opinion, I think there's only 2 you can pick from. You either pick one or the other for the Calder. I'll take Celebrini to win the Calder. It's really him or Will Smith, in my opinion.
Oh, Will Smith.
I think that I mean, Askarov's there. I just don't see Askarov playing enough games, and especially on a bad Sharks team. Like I don't see him having good enough numbers. Like he's a dark horse, and a dark horse for a reason. But
I would probably put Askarov as more likely than Will Smith, only because Will Smith would have to be the best rookie and be better than Celebrini, who is probably going to get the preferential treatment within the team.
I think Askarov would need to log at least 40 games.
I could see it happening. Like as soon as he comes back, I think he's going to get some starts. And even if he's decent and the other guys aren't great, then he's going to keep getting the games. So like, you know, he doesn't have to beat out like a bona fide starter really.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that is fair,
but
yeah.
that being said, I'm absolutely going to agree with you. I've also got Macklin Celebrini for the Calder.
Yeah.
I think he is the most likely
Yeah.
on the
100%.
team for sure. I honestly, I would probably say he's the second most likely to win the Calder in the entire league. I for the longest time I had him as the most likely, the number one guy, but man, Matvey Michkov has been balling out in the preseason. And
Yeah.
it's the preseason. Like
Well, and
but
like that's the
he looks
thing.
good.
Like looking at the Calder this year, right? Is like, Celebrini's right up there, and rightfully so. Will Smith is kind of in there. Like I think he's kind of a long shot, but like there's still a chance he could win it. But yeah, like Cutter Gauthier, Michkov, Logan Stankoven, even Montreal fans will love this, but Lane Hudson. Like there's lots of this is going to be the most crowded Calder race I think we've seen in a very, very long time, which
Yeah.
is exciting though because it shows like how good the future of the NHL is going to be. And yeah, in my opinion, like, and rightfully so by the book, he's like Michkov is the favorite. I think he should be. Um, but like,
Yeah.
but like Celebrini's right up there, and
Yeah.
I mean, if it goes him playing with Granlund and Toffoli, I
He's
think
got a
that's a
pretty good
huge bump
shot.
for him. I think that's a huge bump for him to win.
Yeah. But that's all we got on the Sharks.
Yep, it's going to
Good
be
team.
a long year. It's going to be a lot of losses. If we talk about the Sharks at any point throughout the regular season, it's really probably going to be talking about some sick Selly from Jake Woman, something to do with Celebrini, Eklund,
Yeah.
or Smith, and that's probably about it. Well, I guess maybe Askarov. He likes to bust out the Sellys from time to time. But apparently him and Jake Wallman actually have become good buddies, just sending each other videos of guys doing crazy celebrations.
Hell
So
yeah.
I think they're gonna have something planned in the works. We'll see at some point, but it's gonna be a tough year for the Sharks, but it's gonna be a fun team to watch, I think, still, even when they're losing.
Yeah. Yeah.
To an
They're gonna
extent.
be more they're gonna be even when they're losing, like assuming it's not, 10-0, they're
Yeah.
gonna be way more fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree. And it makes it easier knowing that at least, when you turn on a game to watch, like I turned on lots being like, oh, I can't wait to watch, the Sharks just get fist fucked for another game. But uh, at least there's fun pieces to watch now, right? It's not you watch 75% of the game and you're like, this sucks. And then you're watching the other 25%. You're like, man, Willie Mecklen's sick. And then he's off the ice and you're like, oh, this sucks
Come back.
again. Yeah.
Come
It's like,
back.
just like play all 60 minutes for us. But it's going to be a more fun season. Not as fun as the Tampa Bay Lightning, though. Lots of success over the last, well, I don't even know, 15, no, 14, 13-ish years?
13. 13
13.
years.
13 years.
2010 sucked. 2011 was good.
So 13 years of Tampa Bay Lightning hockey. In those 13 years, 4 trips to the Stanley Cup final, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
2 Stanley Cups, doing so in back-to-back years. Let's dive right in with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Very, very interesting offseason, I think is a good way to put it.
Yeah, they made quite a few moves. They've had to for several off seasons in a row now. The last off season we didn't have to make big moves. We repeated winning the cup when we didn't have to change our team up. But ever since, it's just big loss after big loss. That entire third line of Goodrow, Coleman, Gord, and then Alex Killorn and Andre Palat and Ryan McDonough, who we've now brought back. We lost a lot of great talent over the time, and then obviously most notably this offseason, Mikhail Sergachev, we traded for J.J. Moser, and Connor Geeky, and I believe 1 or 2 second-round picks
So
to Utah.
and the whole thing for Tampa was in the span of, what really kind of defined their entire offseason was in the span of 24 hours.
Yeah.
It was day 2 of the draft. I remember had plans later on the day, but I remember I was able to see the first bit of the second round. Actually, I think most of the second round, and that sick like trade alert thing goes off in the sphere. Probably
I
the
hope they do
coolest
it
thing
again.
ever.
That
I
was
hope
the
so.
coolest draft I've ever seen, and it's not
Yeah,
close. It's not even
yeah,
close.
and
I
seeing
thought the
that,
sphere was so gimmicky, but like once I actually saw it, I was like, nah, this is fun.
yeah, right. Especially like how well you're able to hear fans like
Yeah.
echo throughout as well. It just gave it a different atmosphere. Like
The guy who was hyping
every
up Jumbo Joe
I
super
was I
hard
was
in the
gonna
first
say
row.
every video of Macklin Celebrini getting drafted is forever gonna be imprinted with that one like just juiced Sharks fan just screaming, like just going nuts. And it made the moment cooler. Just getting that kind of fan interaction through the draft that, you know, kind of similar to a game. You're getting that atmosphere. But day 2 of the draft, I think it was the first trade or one of the first trades. And you're probably thinking, it's, a team's moving up in the second round to get a guy that fell or something. And
Crappy
then
pick and
Gary
crappy pick for
Bettman,
slightly less crappy pick is what
yeah.
most people expect.
And then Gary Bettman's like, the Utah Hockey Club acquires Mikhail Sergachev. And it's like, holy fuck, we're starting off with a banger here on the second day. And it was Utah acquires Mikhail Sergachev for Connor Geeky, J.J. Moser, a second round pick in 2025, and a fourth round pick that was in the 2024 draft. I think it was about 2 to 3 weeks before the draft. I actually ran into and met Connor Geeky. And I remember telling him, that I was excited to watch him on Utah's. He's kind of projected to make a strong push for the team. Little did I know, a couple weeks later, he would be moved off to Tampa, where he's putting on a good showing right now. He's putting on a very good showing in preseason.
All signs in the preseason point to him making the opening roster. I was
Yeah,
really hoping he would. I did not think he was going to ball out like this. He had
that's a thing, right?
another point, another great showing tonight against Florida in a 3-1 win.
Like he's a former 11th overall pick, and he's a big body.
He's a big
He's
freaking
big.
body, but he does not move like it. Like he skates similar to Hedman. Like he's a big guy, and he's not he's not Nathan McKinnon. He's not burning people constantly, but like he can go for a guy his size. And
100%, yeah.
Dude has a nose for the net. He loves finding the open guy. He can shoot like.
And the tinted visor's sick.
The tinted visor,
so sick.
It's so funny how much you can make fun of guys for it, and the instant a guy on your team has it, you're like, that's fucking sick.
Right?
Like, as soon as your guy has it, it's like, no, that's cool.
Yeah. But so Tampa made that move. We kind of thought, okay, they're opening up, money to re-sign Stamkos. Later on in day 2 of the draft, they move out Tanner Jeannot for a first, a second, a third. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong Jeannot trade. Tanner Jeannot to LA for a fourth and a second. And it's like, holy shit, they're opening up like a lot of money. What do they got cooking here? And then the following morning, they send out a third round pick in 2025 to Carolina for the rights to Jake Gensel. And that's when we all kind of knew this was the plan all along, to open up a boatload of money and, you, in my opinion, steal Jake Gensel from Carolina. It seemed like all but, kind of done that. His camp told Carolina what he wanted. Carolina said, okay, we'll do it. Let's do that deal. And then all of a sudden it was like, nope, we actually want to go to Tampa instead. And Tampa Bay gets Jake Gensel now, who I think is going to do absolutely fantastic for them.
Yeah, I got to watch him earlier today for the first time. I don't know if this was the game against Florida tonight was his first game in the preseason, but it's the first one I've got to see that he was playing, and he looked really good out there. Obviously, he is a left-handed shot, not right-handed like Stamkos, so they're trying to find something that'll work on the power play. We don't have that big one-timer. it looked really weird out there tonight because we had Kucherov in his usual spot, Hedman in his spot, points in front of the net as usual. Now behind the net we have Jake Gensel, so like we're stacked as hell. And then we got 35-year-old Cam Atkinson because he's the best right-handed shot we have outside those guys over on the far side for one-timers.
Just to let you know, yes, this was Gensel's first.
Oh, that was his first one.
First preseason game, yeah.
Well, there you go. So that looked a bit weird. They're gonna have to figure out how to work out that power play. So that was, I believe, first in the league last year. Like it was incredible. So they're gonna have to find a way to try and keep that rolling. But
yeah,
obviously it's brutal losing Stamkos.
I was gonna say, yeah, we obviously gotta. I'll kind of let you address the elephant with it because that's your boy. That's kind of been the face of the franchise for so many years, and a lot of Tampa's biggest moments are attributed to him. Despite their first Stanley Cup that they won, and him not really playing at all, he might have had the most memorable goal out of that entire playoff run, despite only playing 6 minutes in it. Yeah. So I'll give you the floor to kind of talk about Stammer here a little bit.
Yeah, the entire lead up to it, I was absolutely like, I was so on board with like, if we have to pay this man too much, whatever you want to make the number, if we have to overpay him, I don't care. Like, I'm fine with it. Dude has done so much for the team. He has gone through the hell and back for this franchise. He took a massive discount to stay with us when it looked like it was all but set that he was going to Toronto for way more money. He took a huge discount to stay with us. That made Hedman take a discount, and that subsequently kept Kucherov, Point, Vasilevsky. That kept all of their numbers down as well, on top of being an incredible player, goal scorer, and captain. So, like, dude is Tampa Bay Lightning hockey. And I was so willing to be like, if he fucking wants 11 mil, give it to him. Like, we can deal with it for a couple of years. Like, it's hard to do that if you don't have the cups, but we do. So I was like, if they do it, I don't care. That being said, once he got signed by Nashville and I saw he signed for an 8 mil per year for 4 years, it became a bit easier to, like, I still stand that I would have been fine overpaying to keep him, but I didn't expect that from Julien Brisebois, our GM, and I recognize that giving him 8 for 4 years, probably not the best call for the franchise. And Jake Gensel is going to be better for us for longer because we have him for 7 years now, but he's going to be better for us right now as well. So, I don't know if I would have made the move for sentimental reasons, but the GM absolutely did what is right for the team for now and the future. So, like, I absolutely can't leave this on the doorstep of the GM and be like, why'd he do this? Like, I would have liked something else, but he absolutely did the right call for his job. So, yeah.
And the one thing I will say,
we just couldn't afford that money for him.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say, I do really, applaud and tip my cap to Tampa fans who, they're because of the way the situation went, and it makes more understandable. But like, there is no Tampa fans that hold any resentment towards Stamkos or blame him for leaving or have any disdain for him. Like a lot of Tampa fans I've seen have kind of put it more towards management. Not a lot, but like they are putting the blame on management, which I think is fair if that's the way you want to feel. I'm just glad that the relationship may kind of be broken and a bit messy, at least for the time being.
It feels
between Stamkos and the Lightning, broken. But and that's why I say it like that. Like right now, it's probably still rough and it hurts. But like when Stammer retires, his number is going to go up in Tampa. He still has a lot of love for that organization, the fans. I'm just glad that like the relationship between Stamkos and the Tampa fans is still rock solid, right? Like obviously very different situation, but you look at when John Tavares left the Islanders, and it was a very different situation. But now you see like, I'm sure, Johnny T still loves Islanders fans and whatnot, but like Islanders fans, do not like him whatsoever.
The jersey that has Traitor on the back, like that went viral, like they give it to him every time he shows up.
Like, and in that situation, I say rightfully so. I'm on the mindset of rightfully so. But it is nice to see that, when Stammer comes back to Tampa, there's probably not going to be a dry eye in that arena.
No,
the video tribute is going to be fucking insane.
It's going to be madness, and
it's
every time he scores a goal against us, he's going to get a standing ovation. Like, no, as soon as people realize it's him who scored, which will be instantly because when it's Stamkos scoring, no, it's going to be impossible unless we lose in overtime in Game 7 to the Nashville Predators in the Cup final this year. Like, that's the only scenario where people don't give him a standing ovation for scoring on us. Like, nothing but love for Stamkos. Like, dude, the entire year as well was saying, I want to get re-signed. And, unfortunately, the money just didn't end up working. The bringing McDonough back, I think, was to help try and keep his costs down. But once we couldn't keep him around, it handcuffed us with the cap. So, it kind of made it a weird situation, but is what it is. And, there's still a part of me that's like, Nashville's got a lot of really old guys. They got Marchessault, they got Stamkos, they got Yossi. If their window kind of closes, they can retain half of that. We could get them at $4 million for the last 2 years.
And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I don't necessarily think I fully see either Stamkos or Marchessault playing out the entirety of their contracts with Nashville from start to finish. Like, I think Nashville's kind of got that, 3, maybe 4-year window.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said it perfectly. Like, Breezeball made the right moves for Tampa by, just having to be like, it can't work. And, once he knew it immediately, like, you're not just losing Stamkos, and it's like, fuck, now we're without Stamkos. You went out and you got Jake Gensel, who again fits the timeline of Tampa right now better. Bringing him and locking him in for 7 years, like that was huge. And that really kind of
Kucherov, Point, Gensel is our top line.
Like, that is going to be nuts. Like, it's going to be nuts. Just to highlight some of the other moves Tampa made throughout the offseason. Zemgus Girgenssen's 3-year contract, $850,000, which is just absurd.
That's pretty nice for a 3-year
a depth piece. Victor Hedman getting the Stamkos contract, 4 years, $8 million per year. Cam Atkinson coming in on a 1-year deal, and re-signing RFA JJ Moser to a 2-year deal, who I think is going to look very nice for Tampa. And I think a young guy who can still get better. Is he going to be on the same level of Sergachev? No, but he's still going to be a very good second line guy. And then you got Connor Geekie, who I think is going to find his way into Tampa Bay's top 6. Maybe not this year, but within the next couple of years he will be, and he'll be a fantastic power forward for them. So I like that. You kind of lose the big guy, the big piece in the trade, Sergachev, but you get it. You get a guy that's going to be a great top 4 defenseman for you, who's younger than Sergachev.
Yeah,
and you get a great young
Hedman this year. By all accounts,
so even better than, like, Hedman could bring the best out of Moser, because he didn't really play with many great guys in Utah, I'll tell you that, or Arizona at the time. And then Connor Geekie, like, who we don't even know what his potential is capped at in terms of in the NHL. So
and Cirelli is he obviously hasn't won one yet, but he gets a couple of Selke votes, a handful every year. He's so good defensively, especially as a center, but he has played stints at a time on the right wing. And if Connor Geekie can sneak in there and kind of push him over to the side, and if Geekie's centering Hagel and Cirelli on that second line, that could be really fun to watch.
I think Geekie can play on the wing too. I don't think he's locked into a certain.
I would say I haven't watched him play as much, but if he can be that right winger, because you ask any Tampa fan right now, that's the hole on the team. The second line right wing spot. It's
Oh, don't backtrack. You've told me over and over how much you liked
Stop.
Connor Sherry.
Stop.
You admittedly, yeah, you have not. I don't think you've even had one good thing to say about him. The
I
only
will
good thing I
say
think
he
you've had to
looked
say about
better
him was
tonight in the preseason than he did 90% of his games last year.
so maybe
So,
turning over a new leaf.
yeah. Like
Probably not, but
his
maybe
contract should be so freaking good.
should be good value.
3 years for 2 mil is an absolute steal for him. He can play either wing, center. He was great with the Penguins, and then he was just like abysmal for us last year. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I, I, he did have a wrist injury for quite a while. I'm hoping it was just that, but like, if he can get back to even a fraction of what he was, like, that'll be really nice because he was like healthy scratch worthy for most of the games he did play last year.
yeah. Just kind of quick outlook on what Tampa Bay's got stocked up in the bank here. Uh, not a whole lot of cap space. They do not have their first and second round picks this year or third rounder. They do have Utah and LA's second round pick. They have Edmonton's fourth, along with their own. Stocking up on seventh round picks. They have their own Utah's, Minnesota, and San Jose's. Am I seeing this right?
For the sevens.
No, for 2026. Tampa
Oh,
Bay has their own first round pick.
we
They
got
have
all our
a
picks,
first
baby.
round pick.
Get rid of
Actually,
them.
they do.
I don't
Yeah, they
care.
do. They do have all
I want other
their own
people's
picks. So
prospects. I don't want to pick.
they've got that. They've got picks they can move out. They don't have a lot of cap space to work with, but we've seen with Tampa, if they have their eyes set on a guy, they'll find a way to make a deal work, however it may be. I mean, like they still look like a good team going into this year. Like
We look
I
like a
see a
way
lot of
better team than
upside.
last year, honestly. Like,
I completely agree.
and obviously last year, looking at the stats really doesn't help that Sergachev played 20 to 30 games probably. Like he was injured a lot of the year. Came back, played 2 games, broke his leg. Absolute warrior coming back into the playoffs. Like 70 some days I think it was after snapping his leg. Like,
Yeah,
absolute
yeah.
warrior.
There's
That
no way he
happening
should have been back. That was crazy.
that him coming back made it hurt so much more when we traded him, because it was like, fuck, he worked so hard to come back to play for those few games. Like,
Yeah,
that made it hurt just that much more. But we our defense just looks so much better now. Bringing in Moser,
and McDonough.
McDonough coming back, like, because they've, as the instant he came back, they reunited him with Churanak, and they have done nothing but that in practice and in preseason games.
Yeah,
They were stapled to each other the entire time they were here before. Like, they were together for all 3 of our finals runs. Like, they are just such a good shutdown pair together. And Chernak's at times definitely looked a little more lost than he has in before, without him. So it'll be nice to kind of ground him as well.
Yeah. It
I
kind of
do
helped
like
establish
Moser.
him more in a bit of a role.
Yeah, like, I like bringing Moser up to play with Hedman. Like, that makes sense. It feels too bad because Radish was really turning into something special last year playing with Hedman, and now he's probably going to be on that third pair with uh, some guy who's probably relatively close to replacement level. Either Nick Perbix or Emil Martinson Lilleberg, but
Yeah,
they're
but
they're
it
fine.
makes
And
your
you know what?
depth deeper. Like having
Yeah,
Radish
having the
down
depth,
there is it's good depth though on the blue line. Like
it is.
obviously you could probably replace that third pairing on the other side of Radish, but like again going through these lines, like we'll dive into the lines here. Like it's it's looking solid. It's a lot better than where the roster was last year. So first line again, we already talked about it. Jake Gensel and Nikita Kucherov with Braden Point in the middle. Like that's
That's glaze worthy.
it's at least a top 3 first line in the league for me.
I mean, Kucherov put up freaking 144 points last season, and he did it with Point always being on his center, but The left wing was constantly rotating. It was Hagel for a while, which I loved. I love Hagel as a fit there, but we also need him on the second line to spread out the scoring. So then,
Exactly, yeah.
once we brought in Duclair, Anthony Duclair was on up there with them for a while. But in between those times, they were trying all kinds of crap. Sometimes it'd be Stamkos, but not usually. Paul would sometimes come up from the third line, be there. There was one game where Connor Sheary played with them, and Connor Sheary got 2 goals because Kucherov did all the work. I believe he had 3 goals on the season, and Kucherov scored 2 of them. So
So that's the thing, right? Is like
having that
any
solid
bum can
guy
play on
like
that
Gensel.
first line, and yeah, now adding Gensel in there, like it just makes it so much better. Like Kucherov and Point is already just a deadly combo on your first line, and then you're adding in a guy like Jay Gensel, who people still want to say Crosby made him, but you can't deny that ever since he made his NHL debut, there has not been one reason for him to not be considered an elite level talent in this league. He proved he can play without Crosby, going to Carolina where he
got better somehow almost.
Yeah, I mean, he set the record for most points from trade deadline to the end of regular season by any trade deadline acquisition ever. So that goes to show you right there, he can hold his own and he can play with anyone. And now going to play with Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, like he's going to have a whale of. He very well might have his best season of his career in the next couple years playing with these two. Like it's going to be fun watching that line. Not if your team's playing against Tampa, but if you're just an outside fan watching, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of fun watching that line.
Yeah, I'm so excited to watch that top line cook. Like they looked really good in the preseason. Pretty much everyone in the game tonight really had the vibe of like they've been watching online and seen all the injuries. Fucking like Matthew Tkachuk was letting up on hits. Like Nick Paul was letting up on it. Like nobody wanted to risk anything. Like they were all like, we'll try, but like we're not risking shit in this game. It's the preseason, which honestly I preferred seeing because, like, good God, the last thing you want to see is another great player go down injured. Like so many guys are going down.
We've seen too many of that. And let me say, I'm on the side of, I think the people that say there should be no preseason games, you're out of your mind. I think that's just a horribly wrong take. But teach their own.
They need less. They definitely need less. They've been. How many are they at now? Because there used to be less, and now are they at 8 or 10 now?
No team plays 8 or 10 preseason games. Well, I mean, some do technically if you do like the split squad games, but like most teams play about 5 or 6 preseason games. But there are the occasional like split squad ones where that's like that boosts it up. But again, like you got to give enough time for your young guys and all your prospects to showcase what they got. It's also good to give your NHL guys some like some room to kind of get back into like game shape and play up against other competition. Like also instead of saying there should be no preseason games, unless why don't teams just not play their superstar players? Just don't play them in the preseason and just throw them out there regular season and see what happens. Like you got to give guys
and that's what teams
some
have started
time
doing.
To get back into the mix.
That's exactly why people are complaining now, because teams are not playing their superstars for the first several games. So it's just all AHL guys trying to earn a job. So they're skating like crazy. But then for the last couple of games, the last 3 or 4, it's like, okay, we want to warm up our superstars somewhat. But now they're playing against AHL guys who are basically bloodlusted out there, and they end up, taking a hit way harder than anyone's expecting in a preseason game. And
so here's the thing. And it bugs me because people are okay with it when it's against players they don't like. But when it happens to a player that people like, then they're all up in arms and pissed off about it. Like we look at last year, I thought it was the fucking greatest thing watching that guy on LA take a run at Mark Stone because he's trying to, make a name for himself. Like now, what happened with, in the Montreal game in Toronto, totally different scenario, but like it really comes down to just who people like and don't like, I feel, when it comes to talking about like this preseason stuff. because when guys were doing it last year to certain players, people loved it. But when it happens to players people like, they feel differently.
I don't necessarily disagree, but I also think there's some nuance. Like Mark Stone complained about it to the media, being like he went to hit me. It's like, okay, well, you are in a hockey game. You got
No, I just pulled up the Mark Stone one as
watch.
just a first example, just because
Yeah.
that was kind of the most notable one. But yeah, he did carry himself very poorly after that.
I think that's a big part of it. At least in that specific situation.
Yeah,
but,
in that specific 100%. Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely don't think they should get rid of it, but I don't know. They need some sort of, they almost need like 2 preseasons. They need like 5 or 6 games leading up, and this can be you can call it the training camp preseason, where it's a lot of guys coming up and trying to make the team, and then have the teams lock in their NHL rosters and then play 2 more games, 3 more games, and those are going to be your actual rosters.
But that's like mostly the way it is, though. Like the first 3 or 4 preseason games most teams play, they've got like their full roster of everybody. But they start making cuts when you get down to like the last 2. You've pretty much got your NHL lineup, and then you've got like 3 or 4 guys that are on the cusp of maybe making the team, and that's when you have to make those like tough cuts at the very end, though.
And I think
it already is at that.
But it just kind of naturally is like that. There's no rules for it. So if this team says we're still at the early part and they're playing all their shitter grinders there's no way they're making the team, but they want to make a name for themselves. And this team goes, well, we've played 5 games already. We're ready to play our dudes. And then Crosby gets run by some jackass who wants to try and make 800K. So like, it wouldn't change much because teams are mostly already doing it, but just having a couple more concrete rules of like, for the last 3 games of the preseason, you can only have 3 or 4 more players than normal, and everyone else has to be on your NHL roster. Like,
I don't know. Like,
I'm not a rules guy. I'm not a lawyer. Like, it's somebody smarter than me would come up with it. But I do think
the Line A one's the only situation of that. Like this year. Like it's not like there's dozens of guys going out there getting injured by, guys who are career AHL guys. Like it's a one-off thing. It was a horrible situation, but
that's the only one where a guy was majorly injured. But like Lucas Raymond got taken out by some absolute bum. Dylan Larkin tried to fricking take that guy's head off afterwards. That was a bad look for a captain in the preseason. Obviously you don't like that, but man, Larkin tried to fricking ream that dude. Like, if he caught him any more than he did, that would have been bad.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know. I think people just like to nitpick. Like, if you're at the point where you just want to complain about preseason, like,
it's the injuries.
Go watch the end of baseball. Go watch the end of the baseball regular season, start of playoffs or whatnot. Like,
it just sucks seeing players get injured in games that are basically meaningless other than conditioning.
But guys get injured regardless. Like, injuries are part of it. It's it's a few one-off times we see AHL guys or guys that like we know aren't going to be NHL guys go out and injure someone. But moving forward to Tampa Bay's second line, which I like 2/3 of it a lot actually. We have Brandon Hagel and Connor Sheary, centered by Anthony Cirelli. Yeah, Hagel and Cirelli are very, very solid. Great guys to have on the second line.
Great chemistry together as well. They're the 2 forwards that are always on our number 1 penalty kill unit. Like, they're really good offensively and defensively. Cirelli a bit more defensively, Hagel a bit more offensively. But they are really fun to watch out there. And
Connor Sheary is kind of the outlier. He doesn't necessarily fit into the mix there. Like, I get on paper right now what's here on Daily Faceoff. Like, yeah, he's probably the best option to go there. But if a Connor Geekie can make the team and he can slide in there, I think he would be a perfect fit with those 2 on the second line.
I would love to see Geekie take that spot. He didn't play a ton of games last year, but honestly, Mitchell Chaffee kind of came out of nowhere last year. And dude is a fringe NHLer and he fucking knows it. This guy skates hard every time he's on the ice. I wouldn't mind seeing him in that spot just for effort alone. And then, Connor Sheary on the third line's a bit more palatable, but at the same time, like Brisebois is really confident that Connor Sheary's the guy that he signed. And God, I hope he's right, because if he is, this line will work. But if not, it might just be the other two dragging him around a lot, which will suck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like Connor Sheary did have the greatest year last year. No, like by no means did he. But I think we got to give him at least the benefit of the doubt and be like, hey, maybe he can make it work on the second one. Like, is Connor Sheary on paper a second line level player? No, but he can be a good piece with the right guys, and if he can make it work with Sterling Hagel, like it could work. But I personally think
has the skill to do it too.
Yeah,
and it not for lack of trying. I'll bash him for last year. I will never say that he didn't try. He just got in a lot of cardio that didn't go anywhere. A lot of the times he was on the ice, like he just wouldn't make the right decision, and the pass would go around him, and now he's skating all the way back. But he was always in there, so if he can put it together, the effort level is there.
100%, yeah. Down to the third line again. Mitchell Chaffee with Cam Atkinson, centered by Nicholas Paul. I mean, I love Nick Paul as third line center. It's weird seeing Nicholas Paul because I just know him as Nick Paul. Right. That's a great third line center. I don't really know. I mean, I think Cam Atkinson is going to be a good ad there. I really don't know too much about Cam Atkinson as of lately, but you know what? He's shown what he can do.
Year, sounds like,
but it was on the Flyers, so that definitely could be why. This is a third line that I can't really judge it. Like, I mean, I think it's going to be solid having Nick Paul there. I don't really know enough about Chaffee there, and Atkinson, bit of a down year last year on a new team. He could just pop off and be a great addition. Could struggle like that.
If it's really kind of up in the air, but I could see Gurgensen moving up into his spot because he plays a similar game to Paul and Chaffee. They just they go in there, they hit people. They really are a checking third line, and Paul can also find the back of the net for anywhere from 15 to 20 goals this season. So.
And after looking at the top six, like your top six, the first and second forward line, you don't really need your third line or fourth line to go out there and rack up a shit ton of goals. You just need them to be responsible enough that they're not letting in a bunch when they go out. Like if they can go out there and stop the other team and chip in the occasional goal, that's it. That's all you need from your bottom six, really.
And Nick Paul is one of the better face-off guys on the team, so that'll definitely help in the defensive categories as well.
For sure, yeah. And then lastly, the fourth line, Zemgus Girgensons and Jesse Jalonen, centered by Luke Glendening. I mean, having Glendening and Girgensson on the fourth line, like I love that. I don't really know much about Jalonen. I don't know if you do.
He played even less games than Chaffee last year. Actually, I don't even know if he played in any games last year, but he's looked solid in the preseason. I'm surprised he's the one guy that they kind of put up there to be on the team in these projections. But it is definitely noteworthy that Mikey Asimont is currently injured. He would be on that third line at least.
Oh, that's because I was wondering. I was like, I think there was like someone missing or someone I wasn't thinking of. That's exactly who it is. Okay.
Yeah. And you know what? Jalonen probably gets knocked off the roster. Cam Atkinson goes down to the fourth line, and Asimont slots in beside Paul and Chaffee. I like that third line a lot. All three of those guys play similar game. But I definitely don't mind it. A lot of people, Tampa fans online really think our bottom six is where we're hurting, and maybe it's our weakest point, I guess, other than that second line right wing, but it's not as much of an issue as it was I really like the Gurgensen pickup for 3 years as well. Is just kind of goofy how long we get him at that cheap hit, but yeah, I'm hopeful for it. I don't think it'll be too bad, and none of these guys at the bottom are too good that if we have young guys that can come up like a Connor Geeky or something, uh, that they'll be kept out of the lineup. Like there's room to push in.
So yes, Yolanen he was on Montreal last year.
Right.
59 games played, only 8 points, but on a bad Montreal team, he was a +2.
In 58 games?
59.
59.
He actually
Hey,
played
we'll
a good
take that.
portion with Montreal last year. Again, the point total's not exactly that great, but he was a plus player on what was a bad Montreal team. So
We love those
you got to
numbers.
imagine he's at least defensively responsible. He's probably not going to chip in a lot on the offense, especially with Luke Glendening and Gergensons. But again, like you don't need him to, because your top six is going to carry a lot of the offensive workload. The power play is probably going to score at will. Like, if you can go out there, play a solid defensive game, yeah, throw in the occasional goal and assist there. That's all that's really being asked of him. And based on what he did with Montreal, I expect him to do that, only a little bit better with Tampa, especially with, again, two very good defensive forwards in Glendening and Gergensen. So
Yeah, that'll
it's
be a
like a
real
perfect
nice
fit for a
shutdown
young
line.
guy like him. And then like AC Mont still out right now, but again, got to imagine he slots in uh, somewhere within here. And then we've also talked about Connor Geeky, who uh, is making a push to crack the lineup. So
Yeah, that would. I really hope he does. We also have Logan Brown on a PTO right now, who we actually signed last year, but he was injured the entire year on LTIR, so he never actually ended up getting into games for us. But uh, he's looked pretty decent as well. I do kind of hope we sign him to a two-way deal or a low cap hit contract or whatever, because he's looked good enough to probably make the fourth, maybe pushing the third line, if he can put it together after missing all of last year. But
yeah,
we have a couple of guys who are still clinging to their spots on the preseason roster. Um, uh, Gage Gonsalves is another one that I definitely wouldn't be surprised if he made the team. He's been a guy that I think we drafted in 2020, 2019, and we've just been waiting to see if he can make that jump for years. This past offseason is the first time I learned how to pronounce his name correctly as well. I've been calling him Goncalves for like 4 years before realizing it
sounds
was
about right.
Gonsalves because I'm super white. But yeah, I could definitely see him making the roster as well.
Yeah, like overall, I like the forward core. And again, there's pieces that aren't in here that I think will make it better. But moving over to the defensive pairings, we already kind of talked about them a little bit, but we'll run through them again. First pairing, Victor Hedman with JJ Moser.
That looks like it's going to be really solid. I said earlier, I liked Radish with Hedman last year. Mostly, enabled Hedman to do his thing and also helped out Radish. But Moser does look like he's younger. He's probably going to be the better player. So, I don't have any problems with this.
Yeah, I think it's like, I know, the advanced analytics community is maybe not as crazy about Hedman anymore, but he's still a top 10 defenseman in the league. Moser's a young defenseman who showed lots of skill and promise with, not a great Arizona team. And so putting him with a guy like Hedman is only going to make him better. So to me, it's a very nice first pair. Like, if you've got Hedman there, you're going to be fine. Second pair, again, talked about already, but Ryan McDonough with Eric Chernak. I mean, Chernak with McDonough again, it's going to make Chernak's contract at least look better now. There was times where it didn't look great, but I think reuniting them and with how good they were before, it's going to be a top tier second pair to have, no doubt.
Chernak looked so much happier out there in this preseason game that I watched earlier today than I've seen him in a bit. Like, it's like him and McDonough just have that chemistry. Like, they just know where they're going to be, especially in the defensive zone, that they just don't have to worry about it as much. Other times he's playing with Radish, he's playing with Perbix or Lilleberg or whoever, and he just can't quite trust the other guy to be there to support him or be where he wants him to be. And those two just fed off each other amazingly. Like, they were really shutting down a lot of Florida's offense. And I was also very happy to see Ryan McDonough does not look like he's lost a step. He's 35 years old. Obviously, we're going to be worried about that, but as of right now, looks as good as ever.
Mm-hmm. Which is huge, yeah. Like, no sign of slowing down for him. And again, he makes
got
Eric
A
Chernak
back on his jersey as well.
And rightfully so. Like, he's more than deserving of it. And then again, like, McDonough's still looking good, and a big plus is he brings the best out of Eric Chernak. He's going to help Eric Chernak get back to that, top 4 defenseman that he can be. Sometimes you just need to be with the right guy, and McDonough brings the best out of Chernak. So
yeah,
I'm very happy to see those two back together. And the third pair, Darren Radish with Nick Perbix. I know you're high on Radish. I don't know necessarily how you feel about Perbix as much. So,
I really liked Perbix 2 seasons ago. He definitely didn't have a great year last year. At times, he fell out of the lineup, even for a little bit, in favor of some other guys like Emil Lilleberg, and even where is it, Maxwell Crozier? Yes, Maxwell Crozier. I don't think he'll make the lineup this year. He'll probably get into some games. He's probably our 7th defenseman, but yeah, hopefully Perbix can play like he did when he got called up 2 seasons ago, because he kind of took a step back, mostly defensively, this past year, which really didn't help. But if he's on his game, he can easily be a NHL caliber 3rd pairing defenseman.
Yeah, I think so. Like, overall, is there any defensemen that we're missing?
There's those top 6.
I don't see anybody on their injury report.
There's those top 6. There's Maxwell Crozier, and then there's Emil Lilleberg, and that's about it.
Okay, so really, unless either of them steal the spot, probably going to be Perbix in that spot.
Yeah, the top
Radish.
8 is pretty solid, pretty ironclad, unless somebody else comes in out of nowhere.
And then the goalies, you got Vasilevsky as your starting goalie. You have Jonas Johansson's your backup, who I don't think is a very good backup, especially for a contending team. But if you've got Vasilevsky,
really
like, you're fine. Like, having Vasilevsky is the huge part. I do kind of expect
healthy Vasilevsky as well.
Yeah, that is worth that. He is coming into the season fully healthy and ready to go. And I mean, in my opinion, like, at some point during the season or even the trade deadline, I kind of do expect Tampa to maybe make a move for a backup goalie. It really doesn't matter who. There's going to be lots of options. I think just that extra insurance.
A guy who's making like $800K though. Like, I don't think
they can find ways to make some deals work.
Maybe, but Johansson is interesting because he's so inconsistent, which a lot of goalies are. But like, last year he was incredible. Actually, there was a brief moment in our fantasy league about a month in where he was ranked number 1 in the entire league as a goaltender because he was all we had while Vasi was out. Like, he played lights out, and then he would just.
It's worth noting it's not because he was playing very good. It was because he was getting lots of shots against him, and Tampa was winning.
Yeah,
a lot of games.
He was
it's not due to him being an elite goalie by any means, though.
He was playing well, and obviously his numbers came down because throughout the year things evened out. But like, even this preseason, he's shown it. Like, dude got shelled for 8 goals in a game. I think it was either against Florida or Carolina, against their AHL team, basically, because it's the early preseason. Like, and I watched all the highlights of that game. They were bad goals, like almost all of them. And then tonight, he only let in 1 goal against basically an entire full NHL roster of the Florida Panthers, and their 1 goal was with 3 minutes left on the power play. So like he was playing great that game. So like a dude could be anything on any given night, which you don't really want your backup to be volatile. You want him to be a stable guy who plays 25 games, but
Yeah.
luckily he's only going to have to play 25 games with Vasilevsky in front of him, and I'm confident Vasi's going to put up great numbers this year. He's fully healthy now. We got McDonough back. We got Moser in there. Like another year under the belt for Radish and everything. Like all signs point to we're going to be a sneaky good defensive team this year on top of being able to score. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think there's lots. Yeah, like there's lots to like within this Tampa team. You know, couple players that a little bit unsure, but again, like you've got the big dogs up front. You've got your top pieces. You know, those are the pieces that are going to carry you, and you really just kind of need to have the nice complementary piece to kind of balance it all out. And for the most part, they do. And you know, if we talk about a guy like Connor Geek, he's not listed on the roster, or at least the projected lines right now. But if he's a guy who makes the team, I think he's going to provide lots of value wherever he is within the lineup. So I think Tampa's going to have another very good year. They're in a tough division, but you know, you've got the studs up front to carry you through it.
Yeah, and we also have a lot of our very important pieces signed for a long time, which makes me feel good. Especially after last year worrying all year about Stamkos, which, to be honest, I wasn't worried about for most of it because, you know, call it confidence, call it gaslighting myself. Even after we signed Gensel, I was like, we're gonna make some room. Give us a second. So until it becomes real, I just ignore it. But like Vasilevsky for another 4 years, Hedman's got 5 years, Chernak got 7. 3 for Kucherov, 6 for Point, 7 for Gensel now. 8 more years of Hagel at 6.5 is a steal.
It's a great
7
deal.
years of Cirelli, 5 of Nick Paul. Like we got a lot of our important pieces locked up for at least 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is you know, at least for the next 4 years, Tampa's still going to be a wagon of a team. They're going to be one of the better teams in the league. They're always going to be a threat in the play. Yeah, whatever way you slice it, or whatever way you format the lines or defensive pairings, it's going to be a good team, and they're going to be one of the tougher teams to play against. They're, as far as you know, the players have said, it's a tough arena to play in. Yeah, they're going to have another good year ahead of them. Potentially, I think they're actually poised to have a better regular season than they did last year.
Yeah, I think we probably will. Especially like it's hard not to keep talking about it. But like we missed Vasi for like almost a little over 2 months last year. Like running with Jonas Johansson as your starter, you know, I gassed him up a bit, but like that's not what you want going into a season.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Like there's a massive skill gap there between him and Vasi. So having Vasi back this year, I think will be the biggest thing. But that whole
and it'll help get Tampa starting off on the right foot, getting started. You know, just going right in with Vasi, not having to be like, you know, having the mindset basically of like, you know, we just kind of got to hold on and stay within the hunt until Vasi comes back, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah,
you can come out of the gate
confidence.
Yeah, you can come out of the gate day one and just go out there and win, because you've got one of the best goalies in the entire world behind you. So everybody feels a little bit taller because of that.
Yeah. Is that I think that's about all we got, except for the final 2 bits.
I believe so. So I will ask you, Tampa Bay Lightning, are they a playoff team this year?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you. They're, again, toughest division by far, the Atlantic Division. But there's no way this Tampa Bay Lightning squad is missing. They're 100% going to be a playoff team. Don't know where. I couldn't even begin to predict right now at the moment where they're going to finish in the division, but without a doubt, they are going to be a playoff team.
Yeah, we were still in by about 7 or 8 points last year, and we're more healthy this year. We've got a slightly better roster, I would say. So
And the biggest
we're
thing
in a
is you
pretty
have
good spot.
Vasi.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
have
you think about
Vasi, and
Tampa Bay only got in by 7 points, but they probably left a good at least 10 points on the table at the start of the year without Vasi. And that's at the minimum 10 points.
yeah, there was a couple games. There was a couple. We had 9 overtime losses last year. There was at least 3 or 4 where I remember it's just crappy little low glove side shot, not even that fast, and it's like, Vasi like would have had that with his eyes closed. Like there was a couple times where it's like Vasi single handedly would have would have saved this one. So that'll be huge.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. And to wrap it up, one player, one individual piece of hardware to add to their collection. There's lots of options here with Tampa. They're one of those teams. There's quite a few directions you could go with. Who do you got?
Yeah, there's quite a few directions you can go. There's a couple outside picks. You could go for the Sorelli for the Selke or something. Hell, if you really want to put your nuts on the table and say Connor Geeky for the Calder, you could. You literally could. But I think there's 3 actual very likely options. I think 2 of them are more likely than the third one. Uh, I gotta do it though. I gotta go with Nikita Kucherov for the Art Ross. Unfortunately, people don't like him as much. Whether you want to say it's because he's a winger, Russian, he doesn't like the All Star game, but people don't love voting him for like the MVP trophies. But uh, dude puts up points year in year out, and I would never bet against him to win the Art Ross. So he's definitely gonna be my pick.
Yeah, Kucherov he's always going to have a solid year. And again, like if he's playing with guys like Point and Gensel, it's going to be nuts. Um, really, with this Tampa team, the only 2 that I feel comfortable actually going with is Kucherov, whether it's Hart, Art Ross, or Vasilevsky for the Vesna. And you went with Kucherov, so I will go in a different direction. I will go with Andrei Vasilevsky having a huge bounce back year and taking home the Vesna.
Yeah, that
And
was the
and
other
it's
one that I
not
thought was
Vasi
likely.
winning the Vesna because of wins. Because I don't see him realistically ending the year with the most wins out of any goalie. But I think his underlying numbers are going to be just what tips the scale in his direction. So Vasilevsky, Vesna,
Yeah, that's
I'm
that's
calling
the
it.
other one I was thinking about. The other one in my top 3 that is like likely but not quite as likely as those 2, because I think those 2 are pretty up there in not maybe not being the favorites, but pretty close. But Hedman for the Norris as well, I think is a very real possibility. Obviously,
I don't think I can see Hedman getting another Norris now at this point. Like he's
yeah,
still
it's
great
it's
defenseman, but it's just
it's harder
where a lot
for
of other
sure.
defensemen are at now, like in terms of the offensive production. Yeah, like still a great defenseman, 100%, but it's just tough seeing him, especially compared to at least the other 2 in terms of like Kucherov, whatever award you want to give
Yeah,
him, and then Vasilevsky for Vesna.
yeah.
But I'm curious to see Hedman on that power play with uh, whatever combination of 4 forwards are up there.
Yeah, he actually had a really nice play in the preseason tonight where uh, Moser actually fumbled the puck at the blue line, and Hedman had to go back and defend a 2-on-0 against, I think it was Barkov and Ekblad, and he just like laid down at the perfect time to block the pass and completely stop the play. So that was very reassuring of like he's still got it.
Yeah, he's still well within being a top defense in the league. So um, overall, I think this Tampa team they're definitely going to be a much more fun team to watch than San Jose. They're definitely going to be a much more fun team to watch than a lot of teams around the league. just in looking at that first line alone, they're going to have a good season. There's going to be lots of highlights, lots of top goals of the year coming from that top line and from that power play. It's going to be a fun year to watch the Lightning.
Yeah, and if you're a neutral fan, meaning like you don't cheer for Tampa, and if you don't have much of an opinion on them, if you got the time, I encourage you to watch some of the games just because Kucherov, for my money, is the most fun player in the league to watch. He's not gonna outskate you like McDavid or McKinnon. He's got great hands, but he's not Patrick Kane. He's not gonna dangle the fuck out of you. But he is literally, it is like him and Wayne Gretzky for hockey IQ to me. Like I'd throw Crosby in there as well, but like the way they see the ice is just nuts. Like there's a reason he's so good on the power play. His hockey IQ and his vision are second to none, and it's so fun to watch him just set up in the zone and just like dissect where everyone's gonna be. So
yeah,
that's a lot of fun to watch. It's a very different elite player than your traditional Matthews just dekes him and then frickin' snipes it every time, like, which is obviously very fun to watch as well. Don't get me wrong, but
I think
it's different.
The Wayne Gretzky thing might be a bit of a stretch, but it is on the same line of how I felt about Kucherov for the last couple of years. Like if you gave me a pen and paper and you said list the top 10 NHL players just based on pure skill alone, he's not on the list for me. But now if you say list the top 10 players in the NHL just straight up as a question like that, he's in my top 3.
Yeah.
Because again, like the skill isn't, where other guys are. But again, it's the way he sees the ice. It's the way he understands the game. He's able to see a play 5 seconds beforehand. He's able to see things before they even happen, and he's able to adjust for that. And that's what makes him such a good player. Like we've seen it just years and years on end. We're going to continue to see it for more years to come. Yeah, he is a very fun player to watch, like no doubt.
But yeah, I appreciate you listening to me glaze over my team for a while. I hope we got enough glazing for the Sharks in the first half there.
Well, I mean, the thing is like there's more to talk about with Tampa because like they are a more exciting team. Like years down the road, we'll get to talk about San Jose a bit more. If they have some good games throughout the regular season, we'll get to talk about them. But Tampa's going to be a team we talk about more throughout the season, just because they're going to be more relevant. When we're talking about the Sharks, it's probably going to be again one of the young players does something sick, or they made a trade. Really, so looking forward to both our teams and how they do this season. There is no draft here for who we're doing. Next episode, Friday, will be the final 2 teams: the New York Rangers, the Columbus Blue Jackets. We've already predetermined you'll cover the BJs. I'll cover the Rangers. Matt Rempe's team.
His team alone.
And then that's it. That gets us through off-season review for all 32 teams.
Yeah.
And
then it's
then
going to happen, but it would be nice if Shesterkin would put in an extension before we do that one when we're covering the Rangers. Can't see it happening, but
I don't see it now just because I think Swayman would need to happen first, because like again, if Swayman actually, if he does get that, 10 mil that they're reportedly asking for, like Shesterkin in his camp, like his agent, they're going to have a party because of how much money he's about to make.
And not only that, but like the Rangers also got to be watching this going, man, that looks like it sucks. That could be us in a year.
No, so the difference is like Shesterkin has to be signed before July 1st.
Oh, I guess
he will be like a UFA. So they at least don't have to worry about going down the road of just having him as an RFA and he has all the leverage. It's basically like a deal's got to get done by July 1st. I imagine it 100% will be like he will get re-signed. I think again, they're really just waiting to see what
they just want to get
what Swayman gets, and then Yeah, the Rangers probably want to get it done now, but Shesterkin and his agent, yeah, they're probably waiting to see what happens with Swayman, so they could potentially get a boatload more money out of that mix now.
I tell you what, he's allegedly asking for, what is it, 8 years at 12 million per. If he puts up another season like he's been and just adds to that consistency and that elite level of play, something tells me
Yeah,
he's not going to, even if you're willing to take that now, he might be asking for more. He's
yeah,
really made it
exactly,
clear
right?
that he wants to reset the goalie market. If he has
Yeah,
another great year where he's a Vezina candidate, like finishes near the top of the league in goaltending, yeah, it's going to be
yeah.
even more than that. Like,
And not only that, like the biggest thing with Shesterkin, uh, is like, he's so different. He's good in the regular season, like he's great, but his game elevates for the playoffs. We talked about a guy like Logan Couture who, he's a solid player during the regular season, but come playoff time, he takes that next step. He brings his game to the next level. That's exactly what Shesterkin does. And when you've got a goalie who does that and is red hot in the playoffs, like he gives the Rangers a chance to win the cup every year. Like the fault is never on him for when the Rangers inevitably get knocked out every year.
no,
He's always
it's
the
that
one
they
thing.
lose
It's
to
like,
spite him. Like,
yeah. And the only thing you can ever say is that you're like, fuck, I feel bad for Igor, man. Like he did everything he could except score goals for this team. Um, so
not for
yeah,
lack of
like
trying.
he's yeah. So he's gonna get paid. Like he's gonna stick around with the Rangers, but
And he's a
yeah,
guy who will get, if he does go to free agency, we don't know how much Swayman would get in free agency. Shesterkin would get paid in free
yeah,
agency. There's not
teams
a
would
doubt in
be
my mind
clearing out so much space for
he
him.
would get at least 12 mil if he hit open market.
Yeah,
A 7-year deal now instead of 8, but I think he would get at least
yeah,
that.
100% he would. Yeah. But that does wrap up everything we have for this episode. Again, coming out on Friday will be the New York Rangers, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the regular season's right around the corner. We will have a special episode next week, a week from today, on the Tuesday when you guys are listening. That will basically just kind of be our preview of the whole season. Now that the offseason reviews are done, we will be outlining exactly who we think will be making the playoffs, where teams will be finishing, as well as our final award predictions. That we've picked a player from every team individually here, but we will do one big one where we have to just choose one player, one individual soul to win awards. So looking forward to doing that, and then regular season is right around the corner. So in
We're
no time we
almost
will be
there.
talking about opening night of the league, and then it's just cruise control from there, going through the regular season and just watching meaningful hockey again and just having a good time and enjoying it. So looking forward to it.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. This season's gonna rule. Like, man, the level of hockey has just increased. It's been slowly increasing since like 2015-ish, but especially around that 2019 season, like the level just like keeps getting even more better, like just exponentially. Like we just had freaking like 4 or 5 guys hit 120 points. Like that was
Yeah,
unheard of for so long. Like
it really was. Yeah.
we've had 3 separate guys hit 100, at least 140 points in the last 3 years. McDavid hit
Yeah.
150 some, I think, right? A few years ago. Like
Yeah. Yep.
guys are
Yeah.
guys are
It's
breaking records. Like
it's just
it's fun to
crazy the
watch.
way where the leagues go and the game. It just continues to get better. Um, Initially, I'm looking forward to the two kind of biggest races and battles throughout the year, and that'll be the Calder race as well as the Atlantic Division race. Um, yeah, when we do our full season review, I'm excited to see kind of where we actually think each team is going to end up, because that's a tough division. That's going to be a battle all season long for quite a few teams. Uh, Looking forward to it is all I can say.
Man, even watching their like like skating at half speed play in the preseason, like even that was just a blast. Like just watching hockey again at the highest level is gonna be. I'm excited hockey's back.
Yeah. But that does wrap up everything we have for this episode. Again, you guys want to talk hockey, click any of the links in the description for whatever podcast platform you are on. All the links are there. Come throw us a follow. Come talk hockey. Regular season is right around the corner. Braden, any last thing you want to throw in here before we bounce out?
I hope Connor Sheary is a second line forward this year.
I hope Connor Sheary is a second line forward. That is
that would be fun.
That sums it up. That sums up this entire episode in one sentence there. We do thank everyone, all of you, for tuning in. We'll see you guys on Friday for New York Rangers, Columbus Blue Jackets. It's going to be a good time.